What a lovely day. If you watched the last video, you will know that we've done a rear trailing arm bush on this Mk2 Focus. I was going to fit a new reconditioned power steering rack to this car today. Unfortunately, something's cropped up. It's the same job, just on a different car. Come and have a look. Well, I thought the power steering leak on that 03 plate was bad enough, but holy crap, this 57 plate is literally taking the piss. That's what you call a leak. Same place, right at the back of the pinion. It's literally dripping off there. It's been dripping all weekend onto this subframe. Look at them. Oh my good God. This one is particularly bad. It hasn't actually gone that far back down the car, but this would lose like a reservoir of oil within the space of a couple of days. We thought we'd do the steering rack on this one rather than the 03 plate because this is the more important job. So I've enlisted Tyler here to do the bit of the donkey work, so off you go. Get that track rolling nut off.
So it came out.
That has literally
It's just come off.
that
Great.
that has snapped like the bloody thread off the flipping track rod end. It's completely gone, snapped off. Oh my God! So we need a new track rod end this side. Well, now you haven't got to worry about damaging the thread. There you go. Hit that and free the rest of it off on the taper. There you go. I'm going to let Tyler carry on getting the bottom ball joint nuts off, but when they're quite tight, the nuts on them bottom ball joints, you can double up 2 spanners like that. So you can actually, that's how you can undo them. You get the more leverage you've got, the easier it's going to be to undo the nuts. Right, I'll let you carry on with that. I've had a look at, I've never done a steering rack on a Focus before, but what I have concluded is that it's not going to come past the anti-roll bar and also this part of the frame. So I have decided to unbolt the anti-roll bar from up here, both sides, obviously the track rod ends and the bottom ball joints, and I'm going to undo the steering rack, well, the frame bolts here and underneath, there's a few more, and I'm going to drop the entire front subframe down, complete with the steering rack. Then I can unbolt the rack off the subframe, and I think that's going to be the easiest plan of action. The actual steering column pinch bolt, at least there's plenty of room under here, so I shall remove this and hopefully I'll be able to slide the column straight off the rack. Okay, will she come off easily? Oh, yes it will. There we go, that's a stroke of luck. One other thing here, when you've disconnected the column, make sure the steering wheel is kind of like central position. Remove the keys so the lock's on, because if the wheel was to turn too much, and that can happen if you ain't got the steering lock on, you can break the wires in the clock spring, then you'll have more problems. I'm going to remove the bottom ball joint, although they're on a tapered fit in the hub. But the flipping threads on these ball joints are so long, and yeah, I've cleaned the threads up. It took flipping ages to bloody get the nut off. But anyway, if you've got a ball joint splitter, then good for you. If you haven't, then you've got to use what's called a good old hammer. But I have put the nut on the end of the threads in case I miss the hub and hit the threads. I won't damage the threads, hopefully. So I'll see if I can get this split. There, 2 wallops, and that's it. Our ball joint is off. Bingo. We're kind of getting there. The anti-roll bar links are now disconnected. Bottom ball joints are off. Steering track rod ends are off, and one snapped off. We've got the gearbox rear mounting I need to disconnect here. 115mm bolt. And then it looks very much like we've got I think that's a 21mm bolt there, two 13mm, and we've got another like 15mm up there on our front of our subframe. Hopefully the subframe will just drop out. By the way, I have disconnected the pipes, which were quite nice actually. Them two power steering pipes, they're held in by one clamp, just there, one 10mm bolt, and then you kind of wriggle and pull the pipes out. They were a little bit tight in there, but if you wriggle them and pull them at the same time, they do come out. And obviously then it pisses oil everywhere, but that's what you got to do. So now I'm going to unbolt this frame and drop the bloody thing right off, and hopefully we can just unbolt our steering rack after that. Oh, and actually, before I try and disconnect the frame, I forgot the bloody exhaust is actually fixed to the frame with these rubbers, so I've got to get them off like so. So you can put your extension bar through there and whack the subframe bolt out. Yeah, look at that. This is all the fun of fixing bloody old nails. Anyway, I'm going to go and pressure wash myself down. Putting my hand over the bloody socket on this one. Yuck. Down she comes. I've had to loosen the four 13mm bolts holding the anti-roll bar D-bushes in place. Not that it's made a great deal of difference, because this roll bar was so tight in them bushes, I couldn't pull it. I've got to pull it backwards, sort of like free it from the steering rack, so the rack will be able to slide past it. But flipping heck, that was flipping tight. Yeah! So I've kind of twisted it in the D-bushes now, so there's enough gap for the rack to actually slide out. So yeah, two 15mm bolts on the rack and it's ready to come off. Oh, come on, come out. Bingo. There we go, one reconditioned steering rack. A bit of the old brake cleaner. Hopefully I can clean up some of this flipping power steering oil. I've just noticed on this steering rack, there's looks like what a plate would go here, and inside there you've got some like little tabs. I believe that a sensor would go here. So, but it's not on this car. There's no sensor to go here, and there's no plate to fit on it either. I looked on the internet, and other pictures show this open like this. So I think it just goes on the car like this, and you can't. There's no plate on the old rack that you'd fit onto here. So I think that's how it's supposed to be. Here goes. That's tight. I better not forget to remove the little plastic bungs that where our pipes go in. If they'll come out. Come on. Well, this one's a little bit on the tight side. Yep, got it. Right, and also while I'm here, before I put the subframe back, I'm going to pull this anti-roll bar back around to practically where it was. To save me doing that later. So that's it, and I'll tighten them 4 bolts up on the D-bushes. Well, that's it, that was easy enough. Our two 15mm bolts holding the rack onto the frame are tight. Our anti-roll bar bolts are all tight. So now all I have to really do is take the jack up and bolt our subframe back onto the car. I can get the ball joints actually located in the hubs first, like that. That's about it. One thing that's quite important here, these subframe bolts, especially the rear ones, the threads, they're pretty damn coarse. But when you actually put them in there and you have to thread them up, you have to line the holes up as well. I do suggest you get them in very carefully on the threads. Don't try and tighten them too tight. I would go in carefully with a ratchet and make sure they don't lock up solid, because it's very easy to get these cross threaded. And if you cross thread them, you're in a whole world of shit. And anyway, this one's going in nicely. And just so you know, before I actually bolt this subframe up nice and tight, you see here at the back of the subframe, there's a hole and it goes into the chassis. That's where you put your locating pins to align the subframe up either side. You can use a broom handle if it a bit, and that keeps your subframe in the right position so you don't get steering issues later on. Well, I'm going to fit the pipes back into the rack. You just want to make sure that the seals are in place. If you can get new seals, then all well and good. It's a bit tricky to show this because I've only got one hand, so the other hand's holding the bloody phone. But this top pipe went in quite easily. This one here, there's a little ridge there. That's a little bit tight to go in. But I've got it levelled in and pushed in the most of the way. And with a little tap, that's it. The note's changed, that's gone all the way in. So that's it. Now our bracket just slots around like that. And we have a 10mm bolt, whatever I've done with it. Oh, there she is. Our 10mm bolt goes in and we can tighten that up. And there's also another little Torx 25 bolt which goes through here and secures the pipes onto the rack. And let's not forget the old exhaust rubbers. You know, I forgot to swap over the flipping tin shield to stop the exhaust heat getting onto the rack. Oh, what a twat. Anyway, luckily I can see where the bolt hole lines up, so I can get to both bolt holes no problem. I'm kind of hoping this old track rod end comes off, but my experiences of Ford Focuses are they can get pretty damn well rusted up. So I'll give that a good old clean up with a wire brush as best as possible. Spray some freeing oil on it. Right, that's our track rod end held in the vise. Let's see if we can undo this. Yes, yes we can. I don't need to worry about the locking nut being tight on the threads here because the new rack comes with new locking nuts. What you're best doing is unscrewing this track rod end, like counting the turns. So that's 1, 2, and you'll carry on counting the turns until the track rod end's completely off. That way you'll know how many threads to put it onto the new rack. So you're around about where you should be before you set the tracking up. So this passenger side track rod end came off the old rack 17 threads. So I'll start at the top and I'll screw this one back on 17 threads. That is our bottom ball joint tightened up. Yeah. Track rod end tightened up. Anti-roll bar link tightened up. And there is our brand spanking new track rod end. These are handed, by the way, so you have to have the right side. Anyway, this is going to go on 17 threads as well to make it equal to the other side. And then we'll do the tracking. Well, everything's connected back up, I hope. The steering column is connected back onto the rack pinion. So wheels are on, wheel nuts are tight. I shall have a check underneath anyway. I've left the lock nuts loose on both track rod ends. So I'm going to do the tracking shortly. I'm going to move the car backwards and forwards a little bit first. But before I do that, I'm going to need to top up the power steering and get it running. Now this power steering oil is central hydraulic fluid, MVCHF. So it's like a green liquid, which I shall top this bottle up and then I'll give it a run in a minute and sort of like bleed the air out. Well, I've overfilled the reservoir just a little bit. So as soon as I start it up, that's going to go down. So I'm going to have to come back round here and top it up again. Right, if you can just start the car up, Tyler. Yeah, that's gone straight there. Quick! I'll pour a bit more in. That's on the level now. Can you turn the steering all the way round to the right? Right, all the way round the other way. Back round to the right again. Back to the left again. Now back to the centre. That's it. That should have fled the system. It's still on the level, so we're doing good. Alright, I'll tell you what, we'll leave the engine running. We'll have a quick look underneath. Okay then, let's hope we haven't got any leaks. We're looking where the pipes go into the rack. That seems dry. And also, on them pinion seals just here, on the back one, that was leaking on the last rack. Keep an eye out there, make sure there's no drips. You never know with a reconditioned rack what the condition's going to be like. Right, Tyler's basically wriggling the steering. He's wriggling the steering about to sort of like level things up. Now he's going to bring it back on the ramp. This kind of like settles the suspension and everything down because it's been jacked up. So we want everything sort of like as it should be, ready to sort the tracking out. Some of the problem with these new steering racks is that number one, you have to remove the clip that holds the gaiter onto the track arm and put a screwdriver in there and put some silicone spray so that will move. Otherwise this boot, they get stuck to the track arm and they'll get twisted up if you're not careful. So that's loose as well, our lock nut. And these arms are pretty tight to turn. But anyway, I'm going to get it adjusted preliminary. So we're kind of like, I can see I need to get these red lasers front to rear on our gauges at the back, both sides equally. And once I do that, I can set our tracking up. I won't go too much into this tracking, but basically where our laser hits the gauge here, if we've got one in the yellow and the other side in the red, one either side, it would be 0. But because we've got 2 in the yellow, that means we are towing out by about 4 degrees, 3 degrees on that side and 1 degree that side. So I need to make a few adjustments. This side we are towing in 0.5 degree, and on this side we are towing out roughly 0.5 degree. That means our tracking is now parallel. When I look at the front to rear, they are both sitting around about the 3 to the 3.5 mark, like that. So they're both equal. The reason we're doing this is because the steering wheel has to be levelled up dead centre. So what I normally tend to do, once I've set the tracking up roughly around about right, I will then come to our track wheel ends here with these nuts loose. If I wanted to shift the steering wheel over to the left or to the right, I will turn one of these track arms, probably 1 complete revolution, say going inwards, and then I'll come to this side and I'll turn this track arm out 1 complete revolution, or vice versa, whichever way makes the steering wheel shift over, and then you can get your steering wheel set up dead centre. And then once all that's done, then recheck your tracking is bang on, and if everything's good, that's it, finished. And last but least, oh blimey, the interior mirror's like adjusted for what a woman would have done so she could do her makeup. Right, let's put that a bit higher. We have to take this car for a little run just to make sure everything is okay. There's a nice Jeep going by. Right. I'll tell you something I noticed of all these brand new, well, they're reconditioned steering racks. They're ever so tight, you know what I mean? Because they're new, really tight. Sort of like you let go of the steering in a certain position and it will carry on going. No doubt it would loosen off after a while. But the steering wheel is about dead centre. We're going in a straight line, so that's good. And all I've got to do now, really, after this little run, put it back on the ramp, check for leaks, and that's it. Well, I have to say, this is the first power steering rack I've ever changed on a Ford Focus, and I didn't know what kind of a job it was going to be, but really it wasn't bad at all. I know the subframe had to come down, but it was only 4 bolts really, so can't moan. No, it was an easy little job. Yeah. Now I head back to the garage. Do you know what, I've never been like a Ford Focus person really. They are growing on me. They're not a bad car. We've got quite a lot of these as rentals now, and apart from the instrument clusters that are forever going wrong, they don't seem to give that much trouble. So I'm quite impressed really. I've changed an engine in one of these cars, on these Mk2s however, which was a little bit, well, not exactly easy. There's certain clips and bits and pieces that are a bit of a nightmare, but the cars overall aren't bad. Anyway, that's another job done. I'm glad I've changed the rack now just to see what kind of job it was going to be, and yeah, not bad at all. Right then, well, that's it, that's another job over. I would have done this because I've got the steering rack here for our 03 plate, which is my project car, but because this one is an actual rental, this is a bit more urgent, so I had to do this one first. So I thought I'd film this one. So I don't know when I'm going to get round to doing that 03 plate Focus, the Mark 1 Focus, but I will do that one shortly. So anyway, thanks for watching everybody. I guess I'll see you all in the next video. See ya. Well, as it turns out, the very next day I have found the time to replace the steering rack on our Mark 1 Ford Focus. This is a totally different rack, although it is basically the same setup, apart from the ball joints are different. These ones have an actual pinch bolt which goes through the hub, and the actual pipes that go into the rack are at a different angle. And also another thing to note here, where was the rack on the Mark II Focus, it had a long extension here. This particular car has a separate like extension which bolts on there for 10mm, and then that will go up onto the steering column and bolt up. So that's got to literally come off to actually replace that rack. But this rack also was half the price. This was like £135 plus VAT, whereas the rack on our Mark II Focus was £220 plus VAT. But anyway, it's coming along, so I'll show you what it looks like when it's all done. You can see on this old rack where the pinion gear goes, that end cap was leaking quite badly, but not as bad as the car I just done, the 07 plate. But here's our 03 plate Mark 1 Focus, all finished. The steering was quite like it was making a right racket when I first started it up, but now all the air's out of the system, it's nice and quiet. Feels good. I'm going to pop it up on the ramp and have a quick look underneath for any leaks. There she is, all bolted in. The actual tin heat shield on this one was actually disintegrated, so there was no fitting it again, so it's going to have to do without. But anyway, I can't see any leaks, which is the main reason we changed it in the first place. So that all looks good. The only thing I've got left to do really is put them little clips back on to the gaiters once I've actually done the tracking, which I haven't done yet. But no, looking good. So this little project car's coming along quite nicely. I guess the next job on this will be the bottom ball joint, which I know that one, driver's side, is completely worn out. But anyway, I guess this would be an appropriate point to end the video. So see you all in the next one.